Andy Staples covers college football for The Athletic. He's the host of the Andy Staples Show. He joins us on the program. Andy, thanks for joining us. Assess the current rankings, and do you expect anything to happen this weekend that could change the top four?
Potential shenanigans this weekend. Potential shenanigans because USC-UCLA feels like a very close game. Vegas think it's going to be a close game. I think USC is a 1.5-point favorite. Neither defense looks capable of stopping either offense. So I think it's going to be fun. And then TCU playing Baylor and Waco. Baylor very up and down over the last few weeks. Like if you get good Baylor and good Blake Shapen, their quarterback, this is going to be a really tight game. If you get the Baylor team that played K-State last week, TCU is going to roll. And so that's an interesting one because we could see those two teams be in a very different place next week because USC, obviously, if they lose, they would be out of playoff contention. I'm still not convinced TCU would be out. I think a 12-1 Big 12 champ TCU, given how deep the Big 12 was and how there's really no weeks off in that league, I think they have to get some consideration. Now, if they're 13-0, they're in. And this is one of their toughest challenges left, so we'll see what happens.
No, but if I said Tennessee has one loss to end the regular season and TCU's undefeated.
TCU's in.
No, okay.
If it's a choice. But it wouldn't be a choice between those two, I don't think. I think then you're talking about Tennessee versus maybe a 12-1 USC Pac-12 champ or the loser of the Ohio State-Michigan game. And I think that then it's a little bit different. But I think
well,
Tennessee
let's look at those scenarios.
There.
If I said I got a one-loss USC team and a one-loss Tennessee team, who do you think the playoff committee would take?
They're going to take Tennessee. And everybody's going to tell you they're going to take USC. I'm telling you right now, they would take Tennessee in that situation because they always have taken that particular type of team in that situation. Because at the way they boil it down at the end, they like good wins. And Tennessee would have a couple of great wins. They'd have the LSU win in Baton Rouge where they won 40-13. They had the win against Alabama. USC would have the wins that they would be getting over the next 3 weeks. UCLA, Notre Dame, and then probably Oregon or Utah in the Pac-12 championship game. And those are good sets of good wins in both cases. But then when they get to that point, they say they're supposed to break the tie with conference champion or not. They never do that. They've never done that in the past. When they do it for the first time, it will be the first time. What they do is they decide who's the better team, who they think would win if they played. And if you ask a guy in Vegas right now, if you said what is the line on a neutral site Tennessee USC game, it's Tennessee by 7.5 or 8. So they'll pick Tennessee. I've had this idea over the past few years. If you have to decide between 4 and 5, I think the committee should be allowed to kidnap the head coach of the number one team. Roll up in a windowless van, grab Kirby Smart in Athens, put a bag over his head, bring him to an undisclosed location. You shoot him up with truth serum. And in this case, you go, Kirby, who do you want, Tennessee or USC? Who would you rather play? And he'll go, give me the Trojans. And you go, okay, you get the Vols.
That would be good TV, Andy, by the way.
Tremendous. Bert Magnus, get on this.
Yes. Okay. If I said a one-loss Tennessee team against a one-loss either Ohio State or Michigan team.
Aha. Now, if you have my Kirby Smart kidnap scenario, and Ohio State is the team that has narrowly lost the Michigan-Ohio State game, Kirby might say, give me the Vols.
Wow.
So that's the interesting. I think Ohio State has a better chance of getting in if they lose that game than Michigan does if they lose that game. Because Ohio State has that Notre Dame win. They are viewed as probably the more complete team that, they could throw, they can run, unless they're playing Northwestern and they can't seem to do either. But they're much better defensively. What's weird about this is if I had to pick that game today, and obviously we'll all be picking it next week, I'd pick Michigan to win that game. I just feel like Michigan's been more consistent. I feel like the way Michigan plays is not a great matchup for Ohio State, but it would be a terrible matchup for Michigan against a Georgia, for example. I think Ohio State's probably a better matchup against a Georgia just because they can do some different things. But, that's just going to have to shake out. I do think if Michigan wins that game, that's the better chance for the Big Ten to get 2 in.
if I said, if we're going with who would be favored by Vegas, if I said Tennessee was going to play TCU neutral site right now, Tennessee's going to be favored.
Tennessee is going to be favored, but I don't know by how much, because we've seen Tennessee against Georgia where when that offense doesn't work, what do you got? And we've seen TCU play some. What TCU does that's different from, say, USC. Like, USC wins one way. They score a bunch of points. Their defense occasionally gives up a bunch of points, but they score a bunch of points and they win. North Carolina is the same thing. Michigan kind of wins the same way every time. TCU has been capable of winning different ways. They can win in a shootout and they can win in a rock fight. And Georgia's really the only other team we're talking about in here that's proven they can do that. Like, Tennessee hasn't proven they can win in a different way. So that's where I like TCU, and I also like the fact that TCU has really, in conference play, had no weeks off. They are playing a decent to good team every single time. And other leagues have kind of chum at the bottom where you have a week that you can sleepwalk through and still win. TCU's had to be on edge every single week. Now, if they lose to Baylor and the committee drops them below Tennessee, and they're probably never coming back. But I still think they should get consideration for that because the Big 12 has been so deep this year.
How up for grabs is the Heisman?
Very, very. I did a blind resume thing last week with the quarterbacks and the running backs, and I threw Jalen Carter in there from Georgia, the defensive tackle, because I think there's a real good chance he's actually the best player in the country. But if you look at the quarterbacks, and I think this will be a quarterback year unless Blake Corum just blows up against Ohio State, they're producing at really similar rates. I mean, it depends on what stat you like the most. Are you a yards per attempt person? Are you a touchdowns produced person? But, it's C.J. Stroud from Ohio State, Drake May from North Carolina, Bo Nix from Oregon, Caleb Williams from USC, Max Duggan from TCU, Hendon Hooker from Tennessee. They're all in that mix, and it's a matter of who can separate. Hendon Hooker's not going to get another chance where everybody's watching unless they're losing to Vandy or South Carolina, which they don't want to be in that situation. So I think he's sort of in the clubhouse. He's signed his scorecard. He's just waiting for everybody else to show up. Caleb Williams from USC, I think, has the best chance to really shine over a several-week period because they're playing everyone's going to be watching them against UCLA. If they win that game, everyone's watching them against Notre Dame. And then obviously C.J. Stroud and Blake Corum, when they play, the nation's eyes will be on that game. And if one of them just has a legendary game, real good chance they win.
Yeah, I've been saying Caleb Williams is the dark horse and keep an eye on him because he has 3 games that will be standalone games. The UCLA is big game. Notre Dame is always big. And then the Pac-12, I mean, USC is not helped out by Oregon and UCLA losing this past weekend. But as far as playing against marquee teams, standalone games, he's got 3 chances where, C.J. Stroud has got the Michigan game.
Correct. And maybe the Big Ten championship, but that's probably going to be against a very overmatched West team. So, yeah, and Drake May, I'm telling you guys, watch Drake May. He's got more touchdown passes than C.J. Stroud. He leads North Carolina in rushing. He may really be the best player in the country. And the thing about Drake May and Caleb Williams, I think they're in very similar situations. Their defenses have been not good this season. I'm probably just bad. Bad's probably the right word. They've been under so much pressure to score every time they get the ball, and they've generally done that. And I think that's pretty amazing. So do yourself a favor. Watch a little Drake May. I think.
Oh, no, I have.
I'm telling the audience. But Black Friday, North Carolina, NC State, they'll be kind of standalone. Give yourself a chance to watch him play. He's fun.
As I told this audience a couple of weeks ago, that there's going to be teams that will tank for a quarterback in 2024, and it's Drake May. And this was according
to Caleb.
Huh?
Or Caleb Williams.
Well, from the scout that is a great resource to me, NFL scout, he said Drake May is the quarterback. Yeah. And he said that teams will tank for Drake May in 2024.
I mean, I might tank for Drake May right now. Like, he came on our show last week, and this is a man who oozes confidence. You know that this guy is in charge, and it's interesting. He was committed to Alabama first. He's the brother of Luke May, who played basketball at North Carolina and was a big star there on the basketball court. And he needed Sam Howell to show that you could be successful at quarterback in North Carolina to decide, okay, I'll do this instead of Alabama because I really want to go to North Carolina. And, I mean, they are they're potentially going to be a 12-1 ACC champ if they can beat Clemson, and that is not something I would have predicted at the beginning of the year.
Andy, always great to talk to you. Thanks for giving us all that information.
Thank you, Dan.
That's Andy Staples, host of the, coincidentally, Andy Staples Show. Covers college football for The Athletic.